All you people standing back there at the back, you can come down on this end or over here on this end. All right, so we have an introductory video, a newcomer's welcome. If you have seen it before, please be mindful and let the new people hear it. So, hit it, Carlos. I'm Donna Maxey. I am the founder director of Race Talks, and we're really excited to see you here. Just wanted to do kind of an introduction about what Race Talks is about. We're doing this for newcomers. We're excited that you're here. Race Talks was started out of when I was asked to speak at a McMenamin's History Pub, and the topic was urban renewal, urban removal. Anyway, in your brochure here, we have several things. You might want to take your brochure and look at it. Be flexible and fluid about the schedule. It does change. There's also the Jefferson High School. We have Race Talks the first week of the month at Jefferson High School. And if you're interested in being a part of a dialogue group, you can fill this out and leave this form. There should be a brown envelope on your table. Tear this off and leave it in the envelope, and we will get in touch with you about dialogue groups. We're working on those right now. If you turn to the other side of the brochure, there is, we have rules. We have the Race Talks ground rules. And we really try to encourage people to follow these rules. And they're important that people feel safe being here. I've had people of color who have said, this is the first time I've ever told a white person how I really feel. And I've had white people who have said, this is the first time that I was able to talk about race and not worry about putting my foot in my mouth. I feel safe to talk. I feel safe that I will be accepted and I won't be beat up for saying or asking what seems like an obviously stupid question. So that's really important. So what we encourage people to do is to listen to each other with curiosity, respect differences, agree to disagree. You don't have to agree with everything somebody says. You can agree that that's their opinion. I don't agree with Rush Limbaugh, but he has a right to speak his opinion. Speak from the self and not and from the heart. It means when you're speaking, don't talk about, I know somebody who, either it's you and you were involved with the person, or, speak from your own experience, not someone else's. Respect confidentiality. Now, because you're involved in these discussions, you have a right to go out and share the discussion that happened at your table. But what we're asking you to do is, if you do share something that someone else has said, to not give their name, to not give their location. Contribute honestly and positively. That's all we can ask anybody to do. And assume positive intent. Even if somebody says something and you feel like you want to roll your eyes and say, how could you be so stupid? Assume that they really had best intentions when they said what they said. Be open to new ideas and relax and enjoy. One of the reasons that we have it here at McMenamin's so that we can have food and drink. When I was thinking about how to put this together, the thing that I thought about was, wow, we need to have some place where people can drink and have food, because it's hard to be contentious over food, to get indigestion. So we want, hey, you guys laugh. Ooh, this is exciting. So we want you to relax. McMenamin's is our sponsor, and we want to make sure that they are seeing some results with their cash register too. So just eat and drink yourselves sick. Follow-up activities, just for fun. The follow-up activities, these are the things that we're trying to get people to do. One of the things that folks do a lot of times is they'll go to a lecture and they'll feel so good about the lecture, and then they go home and do the same things they've always done. And what we want folks to do is something different. Don't go home to your community where you don't know people of color or you don't know white people. Go home and get to know the people who are at your table. We have little cards, little colored cards at the table for those folks who say, well, I don't have a business card. So give people your number. Get together, have coffee. And it says, go out just for fun, go out and make friends with a person in your own ethnic group. I moved to an area in Portland that I had taught in, and there were kids of color, lots of kids of color at my school, so I just assumed there would be lots of people in the neighborhood who were of color, and boy was I wrong. And the folks who were there were not very friendly. Everybody was white, they weren't very friendly, and I thought, gosh, these people aren't very friendly at all. So, of course, in my usual manner, after I'd been there a year, I got a couple of the neighbors that were friendly to help me throw one of those block parties. So we threw one of those, we passed out flyers, 4 blocks wide, 10 blocks long, and about 50 people came. And what amazed me is that some of those people had lived in that neighborhood for 28 years and didn't know each other. So what I'm inviting people to do is go make friends with someone in your own ethnic group. Let me ask a question. How many of you know the people on your block 3 houses to your left, 3 houses to your right, and 3 in front of you? Now, if you know 9 houses, and when I say know, meaning you know them, you've been in their house, you got their phone number, how many people know that? Look around the room. Go make friends with somebody in your neighborhood, okay? We got one. Let's hear it for Susie. Let's hear it for Susie. Susie does. How long have you lived there, Susie? 30 years. And I bet you there's some other people here who've lived in their home 30 years and don't know folks either. This is part of the thing. I remember when we were kids, you know, your parents never worried about you. We didn't have to come in until it was dark. Because wherever we were with people we knew. So get to know your neighbors. Talk to the people who are around you. And when you do, don't discuss race. If it's a person of color, or if you're a person of color and it's a white person, don't talk about race. Just talk about what you have in common, you know? Things like, gee, that's a nice shirt you have on. Or you just never know where it's going to lead in a discussion. You never know what you'll find out from people when you talk to them. You might develop a relationship from it. So, and the question is, how many people of color, if you are white, and how many white people and people of other ethnicities are on your speed dial? Now, what I call speed dial is those are your people that you call up and say, hey, I just got a promotion, let's go have a drink. Hey, me and the boyfriend broke up, need to talk. You know, those people you call at 3 o'clock in the morning. You say, who can I call and talk to? How many people from different ethnic groups are on your speed dial? And if they're not, the question is, why not? There are a couple of premises that we have here at Race Talks, and there's a great book that I'd love for you to read. It's called Courageous Conversations in Race. It is a part of the foundation that I used in helping to put together Race Talks. And one of the things that they talk about in Courageous Conversations in Race is that we make the assumption, we do talk about race, and white is a race, and we make the assumption that white people have privilege. And a lot of white people would say, I don't have privilege, I work my butt off. Well, yes, you do work your butt off. But what you don't know is that people of color work harder, and they have to. And to help you kind of understand that, think of yourself as a fish. You wouldn't ask a fish, how's the water? Fish don't even know they're in water. Just like white people don't know that they have privilege. But I'm a fish too. But somebody threw me on the dock. And every so often I get to jump in the water. When I get a degree or I get a promotion or something great happens, I get to jump in the water and I'm like, wow, is this what it feels like? This is great, I'm loving this. And then next thing I know, somebody snatches me out and throws me back up on the dock, and I'm up there gasping for air. So it's not that white people don't work hard, because they do. And one of the things that really happens is that I think of life as being like a 100-meter race, and poor white people start at 0 at the starting line, all the way up to the Rothschilds who start at 97. Those are the people who sold arms during World War II to both sides, to the Axis and the Allies, so they were making theirs no matter who. So people have different levels of privilege that they get to exercise. People of color start back behind that starting line, back to African Americans who are back at -50, and you say, why African Americans back at -50? Well, we're back at minus 50 because we're the most maligned group here in the United States. And if you stop and think about it, I mean, think about it. So anyway, and when we're back there, we're blindfolded, one leg tied behind us carrying a piano, and the gun goes off. And we wind up either slightly behind, even, or slightly ahead. And the question is, how do you manage to do that when you've started so far behind? And it's because you know you have to work harder. And sometime I'm gonna make a film of this because I did this with my kids in my classroom. And it was the most amazing thing I've ever seen, that it came out just like what I'm sharing with you. So sit back, relax, enjoy, and we will have a wonderful discussion afterwards. Thank you all for coming, and we're really excited that you're here. Okay. Well, I guess you know who I am. We're thrilled that you're here. Before we get started on this evening, we'd like to take a moment of silence to acknowledge the people who gave their lives this last week in the tragedies in Baton Rouge. And if you didn't know, there were 2 people who died in Baton Rouge at the hands of the police, and 1 person in Minneapolis, and 5 police in Dallas. And all of those lives matter. But Black lives have not mattered up until recently. So please bow your head for a moment of silence. Thank you. So if you are not sure where you're supposed to be, this is what does it mean to be white in America. And tonight you're in for a great event. I have to crack up that the room is so full. And we opened the doors at 5 to start setting up, and a bunch of white people came in. Always I'm cracking up. And Patrik and I have a good laugh about that all the time. So this is black folks, so we'd still be screaming in. So really thrilled that you're here. Tonight we have a jam-packed event. The folks who are here are going to introduce themselves, but before they do, we have a short video from the editor, publisher of the book, and you'll get an idea of how this all came about.
Project is because I was very concerned about where race was going in this country. It was almost reminiscent of 1968, with Black Lives Matter movement, with issues with politicians being very divisive. And the other thing too was that there seemed to be something bubbling beneath the surface in terms of how people expressed how they felt about, Barack Obama. The other issue was that I was thinking in terms of, I know what black people and people of color feel about race, but I've never really gotten a definitive answer from white folks in terms of how they feel about race. And I thought it was time to ask that question, because you can't have a conversation about race without people listening and people talking and people talking and people listening. And it's been my experience that I found it rather difficult to have those conversations with white folks. And so the question, what does it mean to be white in America, became the premise for the book, the actually asking the question, what does it mean to be white in America? I really didn't have a clear idea on how the book would evolve. I was talking to Sean Frederick Forbes, who's on the board of directors of our organization, whose work I've published, and as a person I greatly admire. He is the creative writing director at UConn and also teaches literature. And I went to him and I said, what do you think? And he kind of said, yeah, we need to do something. And then it started with getting in contact with an anti-racist activist, and we went through a vetting process, and we liked what Debbie Irvin did with her book and the good works that she did. And we also, as the book was progressing, we added things to it. We added the idea of the preface as the book was developing. We added the idea of having the afterword, which eventually Tara Betts did, which she did an extremely good job, and we wanted somebody black to do the afterword. Because we wanted to have that assessment, that kind of wrap-up. Along the way, we had problems with people not liking us asking the question. Some people pretty much ignored us. We went to some really top-flight people in the literary and scholarly worlds who just kind of ignored us. And I guess that was an inkling of what was to come in terms of how people would respond to the question, what does it mean to be white in America? We've had people tell us that, if it had not been for the fact that it was two black editors doing this, they wouldn't participate in it. They felt more comfortable. And in a way, the purpose of the book was to provide a platform, a safe haven for our contributors to do it. I think that in terms of social justice, there's a lot of work that needs to be done. I think that, we've spent the last 40 years, not really, or 50 years, not talking about race. Once the Civil Rights Acts it came into being in the 60s, once the Southern strategy was set upon us, which is why we're seeing repercussions in our political world right now of it falling apart. I think that there was a period of time where people really kind of convinced themselves that race doesn't matter. But it does. It's always been there. It's always been in the underbelly. And I think that I'm hoping that the book itself will open up doors and ideas to people about just talking, instead of dancing around the issue, answering the question about what does it mean to be white in America, what does it mean to be black in America, what does it mean to be Muslim in America. Those questions, we need to start listening to each other and having conversations and realizing that that there's no room for full agreement. Everyone is going to have their own opinion and their own ideas and own issues on how they deal with race. Some of it is corrected, some of it is ingrained, but I think the real outcome of having these conversations is being able to communicate with people. This is how I feel. Okay, I respect how you feel. How do we move forward? All right, you can't have a moving forward unless people are willing to accept that not everyone's going to agree with everything that is said. And I think that's really the outcome that I'm looking for this particular project. The selection process was very interesting. People had a hard time answering the questions. Some people submitted works that they wrote long ago that they can kind of like slip underneath the door, and that didn't quite work. Some people got upset about that because those narratives that they wrote weren't really addressing the question, what does it mean to be white in America? And as you read the book, you can see that the struggle that a lot of the contributors had in writing these pieces. It's not an easy thing, they say. I thought I could sit down and dash this off, and then as I got into it, I realized that it's very difficult to write about, which is really a good exercise. And we chose personal narratives as opposed to academic essays, scholarly essays of that nature, is because we wanted to get stories from people, sharing their personal stories. And then as you go through the book, you're not going to necessarily agree with everything that's written in the book, or different stories, but it gives you a perspective, it gives you a shading, it gives you an idea of what people are thinking and why. And at the end of each of the essays, some of the contributors have more questions. They're like, well, I don't know if I have an answer, but this is how I feel. Or this is what I see, what do I do next? And that opens up the doors for, to communicate with people and converse with people. This book is not just about white people. This book is about race. And what I'm hoping is that when Black people read this book, it will give them a better sense of what the other side is thinking. Now, as a Black person in America, we're groomed from birth to understand white people better than white people can understand themselves. That's part of our survival. It's our survival mode. I think one of the problems that Black folks have is that when Black people try to share how they feel, they have white people telling them, oh no, you can't possibly feel that. Oh no, that's not right for you to feel that. There is no more racism, and I'm not from a slave owner, and I don't know what you're talking about, and we're colorblind. And I think that white people have to come into the conversation with a clear head listening, no matter how painful that might be, and understand that they cannot be in control of how Black people should feel. I think when Black people read this book, I think they won't be surprised so much by the stories. I think they'll be surprised by the candor in the stories themselves. It's almost like I thought they were thinking that, now I have proof. I think one of the things that I like about this book is that it really covers a wide range of different types of white people. It's the chef, it's the rabbi, it's the scholar, it's the waitress, it's people who come from different class backgrounds, from poor to, middle class or upper middle class backgrounds, different parts of the country. I think one of the things I was kind of nervous about is that I didn't want it to be like a East Coast, West Coast book. I didn't want it to be, it's a book, a bunch of liberal Californians and liberal New Yorkers, put together in this book. It really, covers people from different age groups, people who are old enough to have lived through Jim Crow and segregation, speaking candidly about how they felt as children during that era, to millennials that are talking about race today and how it affects them. People who talk about class, not only just class issues, but sex issues. We have lesbian, LGBT people in the book who talk about the duality of sexism and racism. We have people talking about religious issues. A lot of Jews talking about racism as it pertains to being a Jew, but also being white, and what does that mean, and what does it shouldn't mean, or what it must mean, or exploring those kind of thoughts and ideas. I like the book. I think that I didn't realize that the book was so overwhelming, because we liked a lot of the pieces. We did 82. There's 82 contributors in the book, but I like the different nuances. I like it that it's not perfect. We tried to edit with great care to maintain people's voices. We tried to make it so that scholars or teachers or professors can use the book in the classroom to open up conversations, to get groups to be involved with reading the book and having conversations about how they feel about the book, to open up dialogue. And my hat's off to all the contributors, because they put themselves on the line to do this book. They publicize how they feel in a very, very public way. I'm grateful that they feel safe with Two Leaf Press. I'm grateful that they feel safe with the work that Sean and I did on this book. And I'm just hoping that, something will come of it. Every little bit helps.
If you did not see on your way in, the book is available out at the front table from Wallace Books. And Wallace Books is in Selwood. In case you can't get it tonight, it's $30. It is well worth it. It has not only the writings of about 80 different authors, but it also has an afterword, 10 things, an article entitled Appendix 10 Things Everyone Should Know About Race, glossary, words, matters, and definitions to consider, suggested readings, quite an extensive suggested reading list, and other books by Tulip Press. So consider getting this book, it is well worth the price. With that, I'd like for the folks who are here the speakers to introduce themselves. They're going to do about a 30-second introduction. And at the end of the evening, before everyone leaves, we are, with all that's been going on in the United States, we're going to have I just went blank. Tara? Carol? Hello, where are you? Is going to come up and give you some ideas of next steps, what you can do to make a change. Not just come here and have a feel good and listen to what people have to say, but some action that you can take when you leave here. So please stay when the presentation is over. The authors are going to have a little presentation, and then Tara will come up and share with you some more information. All right.
Hello, hi. My name is Patrik McDade. I am so grateful to everybody who came here. I sort of helped coordinate, bring this group together. And I'm the founder and program director for People, Places, Things. Some of the folks who work with me are in the room, and I really appreciate that too. One of what we're supposed to address in our 30-second bio is sort of some way to connect to the humanness of why we're here. And it sounds strange, but it's difficult to do that. I grew up in Tucson, Arizona, just about 45 minutes from the Mexican border, and yet growing up in Tucson, I didn't really connect much with Spanish speakers there. I connect more with them here. A fundamental question for me is just, what is my role? What am I supposed to do as a white person to actually move my privilege and make some kind of change in the world? This is one part of that, and I had no idea that the events of last week were going to happen at the time that they did, and that's part of the reason that a lot of you are here. So thanks for coming.
Hi, I'm Leah Mueller, and I live in Tacoma, Washington. I'm originally from Chicago, and yeah, I think it's amazingly timely. I was a little bit nervous. I still feel a little bit nervous, but I feel like, you know, we're doing an important thing, and hopefully a helpful thing from being here. I've done lots of different writing for various publications. I won't name them. But I just want to say how thrilled I am to see such a large crowd here. And thank you so much, and also thanks to everybody else in this group and the publishers for putting together this important book.
My name is Buff Mae Meriton, and I'm actually standing in for Carol this evening. But like her, I'm a New York Jewess, and I moved out to Portland about 25 years ago. And I have to say that growing up in New York, I was around lots of different kinds of people. We shared each other's languages. We were, you know, elbow to elbow on the subway train. Went to high school and junior high school and elementary school together. And I will say that probably I wasn't aware of it in New York, but when I came out to Portland, I got a real hit of what it meant to be white and privileged. So I'm still digesting what that means here, and what I have to say about it could be encapsulated in kind of one sentence, which I'm not supposed to say right now, but I'll say later, maybe in private. But I'm very glad that you're all here this evening and that we get to have this conversation.
Hi, I'm Janie Starr, and I live on Vashon Island near Seattle, so I'm the outlier in the group. I grew up in the Southeast, where I lived with the shameful belief that racism only existed below the Mason-Dixon line. I was adopted and I was completely clueless about the where did I come from, and so for years I used my ignorance to pretend that I wasn't white while benefiting from white privilege always. I'm old enough to have done a number of things. So I've been a sex educator and therapist, an environmental and climate activist, an anti-bias trainer. I've had a couple of life-threatening experiences, one of which led me to write a memoir, Bone Marrow Boogie, The Dance of a Lifetime. And all of them made me realize that I am damn lucky in addition to being privileged. I am passionate about race and gender equity, food justice, Zumba, and my 5-year-old grandgirl.
Good evening, my name is Jan Priddy, and I live on the coast now. I was born in Oregon, raised and spent most of my childhood in Seattle. When my husband and I moved back to Oregon, one of the shocks was how white Clatsop County is. It took a while, it was startling, it was noticeable. I've just retired last year after 40 years of teaching, mostly in the public schools. And for many years, most of my students were white. I gave them Toni Morrison, I gave them Sandy Cisneros, I gave them Chinua Achebe, I gave them stories that were unlike their lives, because that's what literature is for. I guess that's all I have to say.
I'm Tereza Bottman. I use my my maiden name also, Tereza Topferova Bottman, for the publication. I came to the U.S. when I was a teenager from the Czech Republic. It was called Czechoslovakia back then, and I've been in Portland for 20 years actually. This is my 20th anniversary this year, and I teach. I'm a teacher in public schools. I teach kids English, kids who are learning English in an elementary school, and this summer in high school. I also organize with Showing Up for Racial Justice. That's been my passion for many years, working in racial justice, but I feel like I helped found the Portland chapter, and I feel like that's been a really important part of my life, channeling my energy into action. I have two of my kids here, 2 of my 3 kids are back here, so if you hear some merry little voices, just bear with us. My 3-year-old is here on my lap, and my 10-year-old is behind me, so I don't know what else.
Hello, my name is Anne Mavor, and I'm a visual artist and writer, and the images hanging on the wall are from my large installation project that's going to be at Clackamas Community College in October. Hope you'll stop by. It's called I Am My White Ancestors, Claiming the Legacy of Oppression. And I live just a few blocks away at a co-housing community called Columbia Eco Village. And my husband is here, Dennis Karras. He's my support reader because I stutter, and it's easier for me to read out loud if I have a helper. So you may hear his voice in the background. And I'm happy to be here.
This is an American story, past the apple pie. Yet, I am not American, past the strudel.
This is your story and my story intertwined.
Skim milk and white and new snow, Americans' teeth, the inside of most apples, stratus clouds, locker room towels, fleet trucks, bathtubs, coconut flesh, porcelain, chalk, sugar, bleached flour, drawing paper, jockey shorts, daisy petals, loves me or loves me not. Picket fences, the whites of their eyes, the fog line beside the highway, and the sign that warns, do not pass.
For most of my life, I didn't even know I was white. What did I know about myself? Well, I knew I was born in Sacramento, California, to an Air Force dad and a mom who was a waitress. We were in Tucson because there was an Air Force base there, but by the time I was 4, my mom and dad were divorced, and my mom remarried soon after, a carpenter. We were all white, and none of us knew it. Why didn't they tell us?
I grew up in Nashville, Tennessee, during segregation and lunch counter sit-ins, too young to realize what was going on across town from my cozy childhood home. I woke up slowly to race awareness in my teens. I began to see the disparities around me and to speak out tentatively about social injustice. I cringed when my dad referred to a black man as a boy, and when my mom described our maid as childlike and uneducated. Yes, we had a maid. Her name was Laura.
All my dolls had pinkish skin, blue eyes, and blonde curly hair. They did not resemble me in any detail. I dismantled them, pulled apart their arms and legs and removed their heads, studied their soft plastic joints, reassembled them in different order, used nail polish remover to wipe away their red lips and their dimpled pink cheeks, filled their bodies with dirt, left them out in the rain in the backyard. My childhood fury is what I conjure to remind myself what it means to stand before the master narrative and find myself excluded.
My mother, sister, and I came to this country in the late 1980s from Czechoslovakia, escaping totalitarianism. I was a teenager thrown for a loop. Everything about this culture confused me. Most of all, life felt lonely here. Initially, what I could not understand were the invisible lines which seemed to divide people.
I knew I was Polish, though. I knew that because it was weird. My mom told me my family had a lot of Polish in it, and I told someone else, and pretty soon that's what I was. I was a weird Polak who hung around with girls and used big words.
An aunt called me Little Sabra growing up because of my darker skin and curly black hair. It would be an absurd presumption, a kind of oppression chic, to not call myself white. And yet, just beneath my white skin, so much troubled history and fear. 30 years ago, back in Brooklyn, Mama warned me not to cross the Hudson. There be dragons, she might as well have said, and they are anti-Semites. I hopped a bus and traveled as far as I could, away from Jewish, away from grime, crime, and cramped living. I wasn't oblivious. In Jewish summer camp upstate, local kids threw stones and slurs at us at the county fair. I learned that kike meant me.
Among the photos in my hallway are matching oval portraits of my great-great-grandmother Eugenia and her husband John. Eugenia was pretty and elegant with lace at her throat and wrists. John was black-haired with fierce eyes. The story passed down was that they were Confederate spies. That turned out not to be exactly true, but John did have to escape to Mexico with a price on his head during General Sherman's march at the end of the Civil War.
My great-grandmother on one side was from Mexico.
Summer in New Orleans lasts a very long time, especially when you're 19 and far from home. I lived alone in a sparsely furnished apartment located in the posh Garden District. From my bay window, I could see banana trees through the ornate metal porch grating while I lay on my $19 foam rubber mattress, listening to music on my rented stereo. In 1978, the population of New Orleans was 75% African American, which, for the first time in my life, transformed me into a minority.
As I sat sewing Eugenia's enormous skirt and reading her letters, I was hit with a new understanding about my family legacy. The characteristics before me were all so familiar: obedience, separation, ignorance, and quiet endurance.
One evening after work, I stretched out in my bed with a new copy of the Figaro newspaper. Its cover featured a color photograph of David Duke, recently appointed the Grand Dragon of the Ku Klux Klan. Duke was a classic Aryan man with pale skin, piercing blue eyes, and expertly feathered blonde hair. His face wore a deceptively ingenuous expression, as if he had no idea why so many people considered him to be so loathsome. The writer of the cover article was puzzled by Duke. He was the poster boy for racism, and yet he held an advanced degree, and his IQ was rumored to be off the charts. It was convenient for liberals to believe that all racists were mouth breathers, but David did not adhere to the stereotype. The writer described the bookstore that Duke ran in nearby Metairie, a dark, cavernous establishment known only to insiders. It contained an enormous cross bedecked with electric lights. Apparently, the cross was breathtaking in its immensity, especially when illuminated in an otherwise darkened room. I was both repulsed and intrigued. Perhaps if I spoke to him, he would say something that would resolve my own conundrum.
The White House, white nights, frosting, doves, feathers, pinprick stars, white chocolate, white out. In the West, white is the color of innocence and brides, and what we name white diamonds in her ring are colorless stones, clear like the raw white of a fresh egg. In light, white is all colors. In pigment, it is the absence of color. White opals are valued for the color sparkling their interior. A white paper is the concise and authoritative guide to solving a problem. Black Friday is the biggest shopping day of the year. The day retail goes solidly into the black and makes a profit. White imperialism, black power, black heart, white swan. How we are named and what we are called.
In 1967, I attended Vanderbilt University, the same year that Perry Wallace did. His entry was momentous because he was breaking the color barrier in the basketball Southeastern Conference. When my father complained about black players being the ruination of his college basketball team, I knew I was done whispering. My attempts to argue with him were futile, however. He was a formidable opponent. In his presence, I stumbled and mumbled my words. He would not bend. I was afraid of breaking. I married and moved away to the Pacific Northwest.
After 6 months of full-time research on my project, I ended up with a combination of likely ancestors covering 2,000 years of European American history from 1870 back to 300 BCE. In America, the list includes
2 slaveholders from South Carolina,
A pilgrim from Plymouth Colony who gained land and resources from the Wampanoag.
traveling back in time to Britain, I chose
A Scottish farmer who was a juror on a witch trial.
An English mercenary soldier, and a social climber who fought to colonize Ireland.
an English noblewoman caught in the middle of the bloody War of the Roses.
In the medieval era, there was
a Basil cheesemaker who supported the execution of Jews during the Black Death.
King Edward I of England, who conquered Wales, invaded Scotland and expelled the Jews from England.
A Frankish countess who became a nun and benefited from the colonization of Jerusalem during the Crusades.
Lastly, I found
a Norman knight who helped Duke William conquer England.
A female Viking who invaded Orkney.
And a gold medal worker from the Celtic Iron Age who supported the warrior elite.
I am not exceptional.
Similar ancestor stories are replicated throughout history.
my particular family came to America from England, Scotland, and Switzerland during the early development of the country with all the benefits contained therein: land, slave and indentured labor, and natural resources. There is no question that I have profited from being European American from the day I was born.
Could I use my history to model what taking responsibility might look like? I flipped open the phone book. If there was another man in the New Orleans metro area who bore the unfortunate name of David Duke, I could simply apologize to him and terminate the call. I reached over to the phone and lifted the receiver. May I please speak to David Duke? I'd like to talk to David about the Klan. I'm curious about your bookstore, and I'd like to see it.
The process of discovering my whiteness and how deep it goes and how unconscious it is has been long and meandering. It's about the assumption that white is normal. It's about the deck being stacked. Something I've learned about my whiteness is that it's slippery.
Reading about the sociology of class and white Anglo-Saxon Protestant WASP culture provided me with a key to unlock some of the mysteries that have colored my experience in this society, but which I couldn't understand because my family comes from a Slavic stock shaped by a mix of Jewish and Catholic influences. Gradually, I came to find that I could credit much of my reality in this society to white supremacy culture.
It was 1980, and I landed in Oregon. In random conversations with bus drivers, store owners, in a book group, at a party, someone would pull out the phrase, "You New York types," or ask with a disarming smile, "What is your ethnicity?" You could hear the question coming long before it was spoken, a chess move you knew in your bones. The ego wished to catalog, to know, a Jew. I was no longer with my people, and I felt it.
Sun-bleached shells, dress shirts, bleached cotton, froth on the leading edge of every wave, white supremacists, white lies, fresh bandages.
The bus ride was hot and interminable. As my stop neared, I grew anxious. I pulled the cord and disembarked from the bus. I stood for a moment on the sidewalk in front of Duke's bookstore, blinking like a mole in the harsh mid-afternoon light. I rang the doorbell, and then I stood on the threshold, fidgeting. "Welcome to my store," he said expansively. "Are you thirsty? I can offer you a Pepsi." He fixed me with a beatific grin and watched approvingly as I took an appreciative gulp from the bottle.
On white nights, the sun never goes down. In a whiteout, your life is at risk from cold and confusion.
oppressive beliefs and behaviors like racism, colonization, and genocide have their source in Europe. We must have learned them somewhere, or at least become vulnerable to accepting them as truth. patterns like greed, arrogance, superiority, and believing that conquering other people and their land and resources is the right thing to do in the name of honor, religion, family, and country, I was not proven wrong. All those things are illustrated in European history over and over. I came from these specific people. My body is connected to them. The color of my skin, the shape of my nose and eyes, texture of my hair, my height, my hands. I put on types of clothes they might have worn and imagine my hands fingering a sword, wielding an axe, carrying a bowl of soup, skinning a rabbit, sewing a dress, preparing for the next battle, believing that I am right.
All of the walls were lined with pamphlets that bore such ominous titles as The Negro Problem and Taking Back Our Heritage. A glass shelf stood beside the cash register, filled to overflowing with souvenir coffee cups and glow-in-the-dark Klansman figurines. "What do you think of our inventory?" Duke asked. "Pretty impressive, huh?" "Well, there certainly is a lot of it," I said politely. "But really, what is the point of this bookstore? What are you trying to do here exactly?" "Well, I started this bookstore with a mission," he explained. "I don't hate black people. They have their own heritage, and I respect that. You and I are white, however, and we have a different heritage. I'm proud of our heritage, and I want to preserve it." He stared into my eyes like a trained hypnotist, while his long hands gestured in front of my face. I returned his gaze, I nodded slowly, and I found myself sinking into a kind of spell. Then I shook my head, as if I had just returned to land after spending some time underwater, and I opened my mouth to speak. "I'm not interested in joining the Klan," I said. "I was just curious to find out how you operate over here."
The ideology of whiteness as status utterly envelops us Europeans in its poisonous embrace. We cannot escape its cocoon. Rather, we carry whiteness with us like a charm that protects us from harm, shields us from impact as we dive from the known to the unknown, parachute from one spot on the globe to another as immigrants, tourists, or do-gooders abroad. The poison of white supremacy we ingest with our mother's milk lingers.
Hospital sheets are not all white anymore. White is bleached. White is dead. White is blinding bright.
People get confused about racism.
How could racism possibly have created such rifts between people?
In the early 1990s, I joined forces with an African-American teacher at my son's school in Tacoma, Washington. Together, Stan and I began to preach and teach and lead trainings with whomever would listen on the subject of racism, sexism, and white privilege. We were relentless, and then we weren't. I moved again. We lost touch. I thought about Stan often, though, along with the stories he told of integrating an all-white school in Louisiana, joining the military because it was the safest place to be a black man married to a white woman, raising mixed-race sons, driving while black, shopping while black, being black.
Just try calling white people white. One of the things that'll happen is that a lot of white people will call you racist. What's really going on is they want you to protect them from never having to think about race. That's protecting their privilege. The privilege to walk through life whistling and not having to think about it.
The Brooklyn neighborhood my sister and I grew up in was largely black and Jewish. The first boy I kissed was black, as was the girl who taught me to peck out a boogie woogie on the black keys of her family piano. I felt comfortable in that mixed world, the world I'd known up until then.
Race should not stand between people, should not make us suspicious of motive and genuine affection. But it does. Race matters. Sometimes the white fog between people bars friendship.
As the neighborhood became more black, whites who could afford it moved to the suburbs. The familiar pattern. In memory, it was the end of, if not color blindness, then a kind of color unself-consciousness. We moved to a whiter neighborhood of Italians, Irish, Greeks, Jews, people like ourselves.
I have a white friend who asked me one time, "How often do you think about your race?" I told her, maybe 3 or 4 times a week. I thought I was being honest with myself, admitting that I sometimes think about race. And she said, "See that black guy over there? How often do you think he thinks about race?" And then it happened. I turned white.
Duke's enormous cross hung majestically on one wall and looked down upon folding chairs and cardboard boxes of Klan literature. Its bulbs gleamed ominously in the semi-darkness. He reached inside one of the boxes and removed a handful of slightly yellowed newspapers. "Please take these and read them if you get the chance." Because I had been trained to be polite, I allowed Duke to place the newspapers into my hand. My fingers reflexively clutched the pages before I could even think of an excuse.
I do not decline to acknowledge my race on the forms. I check the box.
Non-Hispanic, surname Caucasian.
I am fortunate. I am privileged. I am white. I cannot deny this.
I don't want to put my X on white because I feel somewhat alienated from the party, unsure exactly who is friend or foe. Jews are well accepted in America, and I do not want to overstate the case. My whiteness protects me and privileges me and hides me as well.
I have continued to work for economic, racial, and social justice, to take up the torch on behalf of the environment and climate, women and girls, domestic violence survivors, and people of all colors suffering from hunger and food insecurity. I have attempted to advocate for the Latinos, the major minority where I live, but I had allowed myself to forget the role of privilege in the perpetuation of these wrongs.
I truly am my white ancestors.
My life is filled with decisions I make to maintain a privileged life based on the oppression of others, past and present. I keep silent when I hear comments among my white friends that are subtly racist. I live off money I inherited from my grandparents and parents. I don't have many friends who are not white. I let fear stop me from reaching out to people of color. I buy clothes made by people who are paid poorly and work in unsafe conditions. I live in a nice apartment and eat healthy food and look away from people who are homeless and poor. Mostly these are ways I stay passive and unconscious because to feel the full truth about racism and the harmful effects of capitalism would be unbearable.
Being white is a passport whose benefits I enjoy. It gives access. But I was born with dual citizenship, and that dualism sometimes chafes. Just beneath white, I want to write Jew, because to assert Jew is to raise a defiant middle finger to history. The history of my dear people's destruction and permanent unease within the dark side of European Christianity, the progenitors of who we talk about when we talk about white in America?
At first glance, whiteness as status is all benefits, advantages, a shiny package of sparkly goodies. But the truth is that white people don't make it through unscathed. Clearly, maintaining this hegemonic system comes at a cost to us whites. Recent studies show that white, middle-aged men, unlike other groups, have a mortality rate that is rising at a rapid pace. They are dying from stress-related causes. White Americans are also the biggest terror threat. We have been led to feel disconnected from the humanity of others as well as from our own. We fear being cast out from the only club to which we tentatively belong.
This is the deadly setup we are up against, and it is high time for us to attempt to break free from these narratives
and redefine our place as white people in the society and the world.
The steady hum of white noise puts us to sleep.
I did not sleep through the news in recent years as stories of police brutality escalated. I grumbled at the so-called liberal voices on NPR, yelled at the voices of vitriol and hatred on Fox News, bemoaned voices of cocooned white people like myself. I whined with those friends who agreed with me, and I did not act. I did not organize. I did not speak out in public. I did not read the articles I chose to like on Facebook. I did not comment. It was just too much. Then one day, a young white man walked into the Emmanuel AME Church in Charleston, South Carolina, where the predominantly African American congregation welcomed him with open arms. After berating them, he opened fire and gunned down 9 people, including the senior pastor, and I woke up for good.
I scurried away from Duke's bookstore. Finally, I boarded the bus. As I fumbled in my purse for change, I accidentally dropped the clump of newspapers. An updraft caught one of the newspapers and the pages tumbled through the aisle like autumn leaves. I stumbled down the center of the bus and hastily gathered the papers while the passengers stared straight ahead, indifferent to my plight. One of the pages came to rest beside a middle-aged African-American woman's foot. She lifted the paper from the floor and handed it to me. Finally, she redirected her gaze towards the dirt-encrusted bus window and stared outside with an impassive expression on her face. "Thanks," I said, as I slid into the space beside her.
Colors show on white. The pale page reveals the text like the stripes make the zebra. It is the words that register, not the page.
I want to believe that given a chance, human connection always wins out.
I do not decline to answer. I am answerable. I have no answers. I listen.
Most white people are no longer white supremacists, but still believe they are superior. In order not to be white superior, you have to recognize there's an assumption that whiteness is normal, and you have to commit to ending it, not just pretend it isn't there.
Every week, if not day, come new stories of police violence against black men and women, unarmed, armed, guilty, innocent. The crisis of black demolition remains a constant. It's a crisis of forest, not just trees. I am obligated to witness this.
What matters is that I no longer remain silent. What matters is that I make my own noise, that I add my voice to the crescendo of all people demanding justice, to work together to seek solutions for all people.
I am scared that the violence lurking beneath the mask of white supremacy will bubble out, targeting me as a woman, as someone with Jewish heritage, someone with a black partner and mixed-race kids. This fear is real and visceral, but I organize despite it. 2 years ago, or 3 years ago, I helped form a group to educate, organize, and mobilize white people to work for racial justice. We raise funds for grassroots organizations led by people of color. We volunteer our time and skills. We bring food. We show up to and plan rallies. We phone bank and door knock to discuss issues pertinent to our community and to the Black Lives Matter movement. We educate ourselves as well as other white people in our circles. We practice interrupting racism. This is hard work for me. This is my antidote to violence, apathy, and despair.
Embracing white identity and heritage as a step toward ending racism might seem counterintuitive, but this history is living in all white people in varying ways, and the more we deny it, the bigger it looms. For me, this process has been a way to understand and feel a part of my historical family, while at the same time taking responsibility for their actions and the privileges I inherited.
I am heartened by the fact that more and more white people are moving away from their screens, NPR stations, and the New York Times editorials, and are taking up their own placards and homemade signs, hitting their own streets and street corners, witnessing and speaking out. I am heartened by the response I have received to my own rants on the subject. We are not all demonstrators and agitators, stump speakers and sign wavers. Some of us are too old to hit the streets, some of us too young. I'm not intimating that all white people lead charmed lives.
You said it.
While our white skin gives us an advantage, it does not guarantee our success. Some of us are struggling to just get by, holding down 2 jobs, raising our kids alone, out of work, underpaid, and without much hope of our own betterment. In the main, however, we do not fear for our lives, our families, our homes, our jobs and future, for no other reason than our skin color. We get a pass. So I am suggesting no urging, goading, and inciting my fellow white ones to move beyond guilt, self-justification, fear, or blame, and to take up the banner in whatever way makes meaning and is possible for you. Housing segregation, the school-to-prison pipeline, police brutality, and racial profiling all demand our attention.
You need to do it.
So choose your heart cause, your area of expertise. Seek new knowledge, apply a new skill, tweet, chat, stand in silence. Speak at your place of worship and work. Involve your friends and coworkers in conversation. Share information, and by all means tell your own story as well. Keep on keeping on, no matter what. And please include your kids. Find out what they think, what they see, and participate in at school. Let them help you if they ask. Mostly, let them be reassured by your action.
Times change, but not fast enough. We are a nation of many skin colors.
We are all shades of human.
Being pro-black or pro-brown does not require us to be anti-white. It requires us to act. As members of the dominant culture, whether or not we feel dominant, we have the opportunity as well as the responsibility to change that culture from the inside out. It's on us.
I try to embody what I long for other white people to do, which is to answer the call to acknowledge and renounce whiteness for its historical and current inseparability from racial violence and oppression. I want white people to organize en masse, divest ourselves from the narrow definition of success in the capitalistic society that forces us to subscribe to the deadly values of white supremacy. What is asked of us is nothing short of building a new world rooted in collective action, shaped by a narrative that strives to re-envision, co-create, collaborate, liberate across ingrained divisions of race, class, gender, and all the rest.
From my privileged perch, I understand that I get to choose. For me, being a restrained ally is no longer enough. Think of the splash we'll make if we all dive in together. So what is this white girl to do? Show up, take a leap, swim like my heart and soul depend on it, because in fact, they do.
Pass the trowel, take the hoe, and let's keep working together.
You are much too subdued. Come on now. Thank you for basically taking off your clothes and showing us who you are. And that takes a lot of courage. What I'd like for each of you to do right now is to share briefly what made you get involved in this project. What made you want to tell your story and have the courage to tell it? So why don't we start here on this end?
Again, thanks a lot for everybody coming tonight, and thank you, Donna, for allowing us to take this space a little bit. You know, it's just that doing the work of trying to figure out what white folks are supposed to do to create a world of social justice. About 6 months ago, a call came out for this book, as well as a call for presentations at Whiteness History Month at PCC. Did anyone attend that event at PCC? You know, it's complicated. All this is complicated. A lot of us, we already know that we're taking up too much space, and yet pretending that we don't doesn't take up any less space. So there's no real right way to do this. And so you just have to ask yourself at those moments, and that's how my part of the story is just, do I put in a proposal or not? And we had all written a piece, and somebody wrote on a listserv, hey, you all are in the Northwest. And I was submitting that thing to Whiteness History Month, and I said, if even 3 people say they want to do it, I'm going to put it in, because we didn't know each other, there was no time to build consensus, you know. So we put it in, and it got accepted, and that's basically how we all met. And then I've been working with Donna a lot, and I said, hey, Donna, you know, the presentation was interesting. I don't know if it was good or not, it was interesting. Can we come and do this at Race Talks? And then, you know, we had no idea and what would be happening right now. And so I just want to say that as an organizer here in Portland for more than 20 years, the reason you organize is because you don't know when you're going to need to be a space for this to happen.
Hi, I'm Leah again, and no, when I wrote this thing, I had no idea how timely it was. It was one of those things that, you know, not being from a well-to-do family, I figured I wasn't privileged at all, and that was the end of the story. And I swear, I really didn't think much about it for a very, very long time. And, you know, I had that experience back in the late 70s, meeting with David Duke, because I was very confused about what my own belief system was. I won't lie to you, I did not know what the hell I thought or felt. And I was confused, and I wanted to see what the face of racism actually really looked like, because I thought, okay, if I see that, then I might have some kind of idea what my own values are. And so the question that Gabrielle was asking when she was asking for that perspective of a Caucasian person immediately made me think of this David Duke, encounter years and years ago, because it was so pivotal for me. It was just such a big deal, and probably more than I even realized at the time, actually. So it was just perfect. The story was very difficult for me to write. I can't even begin to say how difficult that was, to go into my own dark place and pull that up and talk about that in a candid manner. And I was just so thrilled that Gabrielle and Sean wrote me and said they loved it. And I was like so happy. So anyway, that's my own story. I'm going to pass on the microphone here.
My name is Buff, and I have no idea what Carol would say. But I will say that I was asked to be here to take her place, and I'm very glad that I was, and I'm glad that I'm here. And I don't know about joining movements at this point. I've never been a real movement person, but I do know that what I do on a day-to-day basis is meet people in the eye, say hello, and not make assumptions as much as possible. And that's sort of my way of doing things right now. So regardless of whether there's a movement or not to be white in America and own it and be responsible and accountable and all that stuff, for me, the biggest piece is we are basically all humans, and the simple act of saying hello and greeting somebody with a smile might be really helpful. For me, that's where I have to start.
So I'm Janie Starr, and I had the privilege of doing a lot of anti-bias work, as I wrote about, particularly in the 90s with Stan Harris, and then I moved and stopped doing that work and started doing other kinds of work. And as I said, and then Charleston happened. I don't know why that was the particular one that woke me up for good, but it did. And I started writing, and I kept blocking myself and not going anywhere and thinking, well, who gives a, oh, this is not an all-adult group, is it? Okay, who gives a rip what I have to say? And I kept trying to write, nothing came and nothing came. And I went to a workshop and I was given an assignment to write a rant at white people. And it was really exciting. And I went back and I wrote this outrageous rant and said all the things I wanted to say when not being politically correct. And I couldn't read it here, I'm pretty sure. But it broke me wide open. And then I wrote this essay. And really, my goal was exactly what I read, which was to engage, encourage, push whatever I could do with fellow white people to get them off their derrieres and joining this movement. So I started doing workshops again on Vashon and other kinds of projects that we've got going there, and I will continue to do this. And it was such an honor, not being from the Portland area, to get to come and be part of this. So I'm really grateful to be here. Thank you.
Jan Priddy. I was writing essays about color, and it was very literal. I wrote an essay about blue. I wrote an essay about green. I got to orange. I was holding off on purple because it's my favorite color. And then I read the call for what does it mean to be white in America. And frankly, that was like way down on my list of colors to work on. I'd done color blindness, I had done how color changes when it goes through, just anything. But I thought it was time to come to grips with that. What does that mean to be white in America? And I thought it was an interesting question. And I know Gabrielle said that some people had told her that they were afraid to write the essay until they knew the editors were black. See, I didn't do it that way. I wrote the essay as if I had, because I had no idea who they were, and I might be writing for crazy people. And then they accepted my essay, and I was trying to be so careful. I was trying to come from a position of humility and of listening and of beauty and humility again. And they accepted my story, and I immediately went to their website, looked them up, and thought, oh, thank God. I'm not writing for wackos. I'm writing for somebody who really wants to know, who wants us to share our stories, and wants us to be candid, and wants us to figure out where we are. And I thought that was a good thing. So, yeah.
I saw this call for submissions, and one of my pieces of my identity is a writer, but I just do it for myself. I don't usually, or I do, it's usually just something work related, but I saw, oh, it's about race. Oh, that's my topic. I'm obsessed with race. How perfect, what a perfect merge of my two passions. So I tried, it was my way of working out, because I've been working these issues out for more than 2 decades, and I'm still working them out. So I thought, I'll just use this piece as another vehicle to work these ideas out. And part of me wanted to make sure that there are some immigrant voices represented, because they're a huge part of the white population in this country are immigrants, and I didn't know the call for submissions actually didn't really account for that. It just said, Americans. I don't really identify as American, but I took a risk to submit to see if it would fly. And so I also wanted to share how I cope with, how I grapple with being white. And I do that through many different ways, but one of them is trying to organize, with other white people. And so that I wanted to write about that, and I wanted to write about how that is a way that gives me hope, and a way that puts all those feelings into action, how that's really important. And I listed ways that people can contribute and can make a difference. So that's...
Let's see, there's so much to say. So this essay came about because I was working on my installation project for about 3 years, delving into my history and deeply, and yes, they're on the wall. And I thought this is a perfect way to share my process of what I learned doing the art project and the research and the costume making and the painting and the photographing and the recording of the audio diaries. It's a whole huge thing. And so I just, to be honest, I saw it as an opportunity to promote my art project. And it's working, it's really effective. And I also wanted to say that why I did the project was that I just wanted to know where I came from and what I learned from them. And it was a journey to do that, and I learned a ton. So, thank you.
Okay, so we're going to have Tracy share what you can do to get involved. And before Tracy shares, I would like to say that we have a number of facilitators here. There are a lot of people sitting on the floor in the back, and I want you to stay for the discussion. The discussion is, while this was important, the discussion is really the most important part. For you to get to talk to other people, for you to make a commitment. And what I'd like to hear in each group is people to make a commitment about what they're going to do when they leave here. Because it does you no good to come here and feel filled up and not change this world. So Tracy's going to give you some alternatives.
Thank you very much. And so my name's Tracy, and I got involved with this panel through Surge, and we'll talk about Surge showing up for racial justice in just a minute. But to help frame the conversations that you all can have at your table is thinking about change, and kind of suspecting that most of you are in this room because you're somewhat dissatisfied with things that are happening in our society today. Anybody 100% satisfied with society? Yeah, okay. So change is big, it's enormous. The things we're talking about changing are systems that have been in place for like 400 years, right? So that's big change, big movement level change. So the enormity of that can feel really overwhelming. So as you think about the kinds of changes that you want to make, the kinds of commitments that you'd like to make, if you think about it as concentric circles, right? What do you think is in that middle circle? What's in that middle circle? Where does the change start? Yes, the change starts with you, we, ourselves, right? Knowing our identities, exploring who we are, who society tells us we're supposed to be, keeping what's yours inside, right? Holding the rest out here. Learn about, understand what your strengths are, what resources you have, what privileges, what power you have in society, where are your lever points to help make change happen. And learn, educate yourself. For all the white folks in the room, please do not expect or ask people of color to educate you for you, okay? You've got to do this work for yourself. Tons of resources, right? Get to know your biases, be aware of how you react to certain people's situations, find ways to interrupt that, but be aware of what's happening. And most of all, take care of yourself, right? Love yourself deeply in this work. Interpersonal. So you've got the individual, out from that is interpersonal. That's why you're all here. That's what Donna's been doing, is encouraging us to build relationships across difference. That's huge. So know yourself, get to know people who are different from you, and understand how society has sort of categorized us, and work across difference as much as you can. Moving out from there, organize. We've talked about Surge a couple times, showing up for racial justice. How many people are connected to Surge in this room? All right. If you're not connected to Surge, Surge is organizing white people for racial justice. It's a national organization. We've got a local chapter here. Tereza was saying she was one of the founders. We've got action groups. I'm leading a book club. We've got a family group. We've got a white men accountability group. Zadok's here somewhere. We've got a family group, immigration justice group, Black Lives Matter group. We've got lots of different action groups to get involved in. There's a sign-up sheet on your table. If you want to be a base supporter of Surge, make sure you put your name and your email address on there. And stay connected through Facebook. When we organize, it takes the pressure off of, if we all said, we want to do something about this, and we start showing up and demanding, we want to help, we're really good intentions, that's going to get really messy, right? For a lot of folks who want our support, but if we're not organized, it might perpetuate some of the same systems of oppression that we keep seeing, okay? So organize. Who else can we get around? Support race talks. You're all here. How are you supporting race talks? One of the things that Surge teaches us to do is, if you can imagine donating 1% of your salary to organizations that are being led by communities of color, that are specifically supporting communities of color, do it. If you're not doing it, support race talks. Support Black Lives Matter PDX. They're selling t-shirts. You have until August 1st to buy a t-shirt to support Black Lives Matter PDX. Tons of organizations that you can support. Join NAACP locally. Get involved at an organizational level. I think that's pretty much, so think about framing the actions that you can take across all of those levels. In order for sustained social change to happen, it has to occur at all of those levels. Don't get stuck in your head, right? Reach out, organize, work across all of those levels, and make sure that that's the work that you're doing. Take it on, we can do it. These systems are created by someone's for some time. Let's make some new ones, right? All right.
So a couple of things I'd like for you to do. On the table is a sign-up sheet for Race Talks. please put your name and email address on there. And if you're interested in volunteering, there's a surge list also. There's also an evaluation form that needs to be filled out. Please do that before you go. And I'm not good at asking for money, but damn it, I'm doing it now. I have been doing this for 6 years. I've not gotten paid. There is no money that I get. The money that is donated is given to the speakers. So I am ready to take Race Talks on the road, because Race Talks has been successful here, and we need to take it to other communities and share what we're doing here. So I need people who are lawyers, organizers, people who want to do websites, people who want me to help me organize paper. I'm part rabbit. When I touch it, it turns into 40 more pieces. So we need help. And Race Talks is me. And I'm just going to be honest and say, in the last year or so, I had a heart attack and didn't know it. And I've still been doing it and taking care of my 96-year-old disabled mother. So get off your ass, put some money in that basket. Do not put in 20 cents. Put in some money with some zeros behind it, because we need it, and I'm ready to move Race Talks out of Portland. We're ready to make more than one Race Talks here. We have community police forums. We have Krebs, who was the assistant police chief, finding his voice and saying he is making change. We need to move forward with this. So with that in mind, we have discussion groups at every table. There is a facilitator. We have a set of questions that are on the back of this form. And we want to have you to discuss this. White people, wake up. Because if you are the most oppressed people in this country, and you're oppressed more than people of color because you don't know it. You don't know it. Poor, working, and middle-class white people are oppressed by the 10%, the 1%. And you're so busy helping to hold down people of color, you don't realize you're getting screwed. And if we go together, people of color know. We know we're screwed. We know this. We know this is little kids. But you guys don't know it. And if we all got together, we could turn this mother out. So let's get together and stop thinking, oh, I'm not this way. Yeah, you are. We all are. We all have to get together. So I had said I wasn't going to talk this time, but I get a little passionate up here.
Give her a round of applause, everybody!
Sign up on this sheet. There's a heart-shaped basket back there. Put your heart in that basket. Leave some money. Let's get this thing on the road. Okay, so if you're going to leave early, please, if you have an evaluation, fill it out, put it on the back table, or leave it on your table, whichever you would like. We're going to take a few minutes to reorganize. Let's go. And if you are not in a group, there are some other facilitators, extra facilitators. There's people on the sides here that need a facilitator. So,
and Don, are we adding ourselves to a group?
And the folks who are up here at the front are adding themselves to groups. So here's the deal. You see this lovely lady? She's bringing me 2 cards. On the card is, one name is Kathy, the other name is Barbara. And they are smart enough to be from different ethnicities. And that's the whole point. Because we're trying to get you to get to know somebody from a different ethnicity. If there's no one in your group that's from a different ethnicity, then we will accept that you have people from the same ethnicity. So what you're supposed to do is have 3 pieces of paper. One would be Kathy's name and email address. The other one would be Barbara's name and email address. They would exchange. Then Kathy and Barbara will write their name on a piece of paper, first and last name, because Kathy and Barbara ain't going to get it. And then put this in the basket, and in about 3 minutes, we are going to have a drawing for $25 for the 2 people who win to go to dinner on McMinimans. And your instructions are to go to dinner and talk to each other about everything except race. So,
3 minutes.